Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle, joined by my co-host, Goody, whereas the other two co-hosts are out doing their Christmas thing out and about. I won't complain about it too much, but I will say thank you for tuning in to this episode. The title of the Burgundy Zones episode tonight is The Battle of the Bastards. I couldn't think of a better title for us going against New York tomorrow at 1 o'clock. There's not much to play for, Goody. So the first question I have for you is Jayden Daniels is not playing in this game, even though he could have finished the game on Sunday. They didn't allow him to go back in. It was a precautionary measure, is what Dan Quinn said. And then he's out for this game, and was in a limited capacity all week practicing. But it begs the question, Goody, what does that tell you?
Yeah, it does. It definitely raises the question mark because, like you stated, the re-injury wasn't significant. Obviously there was no long-term damage to it. It was just kind of banged up and feeling uneasy at the time of happening last Sunday. And like you said, he could have come back into the game. Coach made it upon his ultimate decision to sit him down and just move forward without him. But it does raise some question because if the quarterback is healthy, you're kind of expressing that there's no need for concern or red flag or panic, but yet you're still having him rest. Whereas this is valuable time in terms of getting as many reps as possible. We all know it's a lost season at this point,
Yep.
in the standings. But in terms of lost entirely, you can't say that because you always have to be prepared to evaluate your team, get your players down the field, running those reps, getting those building that chemistry as a team, just so you see what you have going into next season. So this is almost like a dress rehearsal kind of time of year. It's for the GM Adam Peters, Coach Dan to see what they're working with moving forward. By Jayden not playing, it does raise a little concern to me, just because are we being too cautious with the quarterback now? And I understand this is your prize, kind of piece here for the franchise. Finally have a franchise quarterback, so you do want to have some caution. But again, if the quarterback is healthy, we're going up against division rival. You want to have him on the field. You want to get as much as you can with the offensive players together in sync before going into the offseason. So it does raise some concern for me.
Absolutely, it does. It shows indecision, right? If he's able to participate in practice in limited capacity, it does beg the question. And obviously, the go-to immediate answer is they're sitting him for the remainder of the season. And I don't fault them for that, for wanting to go down that route. I don't agree with it, but I don't fault them for going down there. It's a smart play. But ultimately, like I've gotten this argument with coworkers, with other people saying, well, like if he's banged up, he shouldn't be in there. Like I agree with you. If he's too banged up to the point where he can't play or be like not be limited, then he shouldn't be out there. But there's a lot of players on this team probably suffering from lingering issues that they're continuing to play through, right? And so it kind of brings that up. But ultimately, you have to, it begs the question, what is the vision here? Like, what was, then if you're making that decision now, then why not last week? And that's the kind of mindset I think going into this, where a lot of people are scratching their heads saying, well, what are you doing? And I think ultimately the team wanted to be able to see what they had with Terry, with Debo, with Jayden on the field, to see what they could do together, right? And the crazy thing is they came up with 0 points last week. And as much as I want to put those on the issues with turnovers in that game, which obviously played a part, but ultimately, it's like, what can we carry over into next season besides just clinging on to 2024? And that's not ultimately what you want to do, right? You want to be able to build on something from this season to say, this is what we're trying to get back to. If you look at the Detroit Lions and their kind of rise to prominence, you could say that they didn't have a season like this, right? Like they just continued to build year after year after year. And it definitely does not feel like that with Washington. So it is a concern. I know people are getting on DQ. I know there's some even clamoring for to walk away from DQ. I get it, but you do have to put it in perspective to say like if you're gonna literally try to put him up for coach of the year last year, you can't fire him after this year. And like
Yeah,
that's just ultimately where, and I think continuity is what really springs success in football teams. The Snyder way would be firing Marty Schottenheimer after the 14 win season, right? Like that's this kind of thing where it's like, don't do that. I know this is a knee jerk reaction. I know that we're all pissed off about this, but no, man, don't do it. It's just it's not worth it. And the continuity is what you need ultimately moving forward. Just the same vision. As soon as you bring another coach in here, there's a handful of guys that the other coach is not going to want to have, and you're just rebuilding again. And
yeah.
at least we're starting with something, if that makes sense. But my next question for you, because the talk of premium players has been a thing of players either sought after in the draft or you try to get in free agency. So I want to ask you, who's the premium players on Washington right now? And what I mean by a premium player is a high productive starter.
Okay. We have, the record wouldn't tell this, but we do have a few that I could say could probably go, stand in a room with any team across the league. But I'll say, obviously Terry McLaurin, Scary Terry, we have as a premium player, whether the world and the league wants to recognize that or not. But trust me, believe he is a
Our
premium
fan base
player.
doesn't, Goody.
Apparently, apparently. So I'll go Scary Terry. Even with Jayden Daniels' small sample size, I'm going to give him the nod as a premium player. Who wouldn't want to have somebody with that kind of upside and potential? And not even just upside and potential. We actually saw him do it. So there is proof to it. It's not more or less just like a scouting and a what if kind of thing. We have seen it. So I'll give Jayden Daniels as a premium player. Obviously, you
Sure.
have the left tackle. Laramie Tunsil is probably one of the best, if not the best, left tackle, depending on how you kind of grade him yourselves. So Laramie Tunsil, obviously, premium player. Um, as far as those three go, I would say those are without doubt. If I were to sprinkle in, say, another name across the whole roster, I would have to go. I'm going to give Sam Cosmi the nod
All right.
just because of the value of the offensive line position and how important that is in this game. I think people kind of forgot about Sam, after his injury and his recovery and him kind of quietly being replaced into the lineup. Sam Cosmi has been an absolute dog ever since he's been in the NFL. So if I were to say top three, I would say Jayden, Scary, and Tunsil, and I would give a honorable mention to Sam Cosmi as a premium player.
Yeah, and the sad part about this exercise is you ultimately see that you want as many as possible, right? A high productive starter. There's teams around the league that you could point to say, well, they have a lot of high productive starters there, and it's about balance, right? I was looking at our defensive stats today, Goody, and I remember last season we were all saying to each other in the offseason, if we could get the run defense that ranking down to like maybe middle of the pack, this team could really do something, right? And to look at the defensive stats and that we are literally in the bottom five of every statistical category that I typically write down, it's demoralizing to really look at that because you want to be able to say you have premium players, but how can you say you have any premium players on defense with ranking in the bottom, literally the in the sewer defensive rankings, and it's really hard to grasp, and it's really inexcusable when speaking from a defensive staff's standpoint, right? Because that was the strength coming into this to say we have a defensive staff that can right the ship, that can make things work and do this and that. And that ultimately wasn't the case, especially this season. So it's really disheartening that we ultimately, the guys that we're choosing to be premium players, that I agree with most of your list. And it sucks that we're not able to pinpoint anybody on defense, really. I mean, we can say Bobby, which Bobby is productive in the sense of just gaining tackles, but in the sense of being highly productive in every aspect as a defender, I wouldn't put Bobby up there right now, unfortunately. And I'm sorry to say that, but it's the truth. If we had a chance to get somebody who's just a little bit faster, I think that 80% of the fan base would probably grab for that. I think the coaching staff would be inverse to that. But it's disheartening to see how far back the defense has gone. Like they made these acquisitions in the offseason to kind of help the run defense. and that took a gigantic step back. Like originally they were doing well against the run, and then it just fizzled out from there. Just got
Let me
destroyed.
ask you a quick question. Because I do agree it's hard to pinpoint a defensive premium player, but in Washington, if you could go back, what would you say would be the last defense that had a premium player on it in Washington?
Ooh, I would say Cam Curl for one. Easily that would be
And
one for me.
he was overlooked. A lot of
Very.
people slept on Cam Crow, which was terrible, but
But I
missed
said
that
it.
dude.
I said it so many times, Goody. That dude cleans up a lot of issues that this defense has, and not it's widely overlooked because he doesn't get turnovers and he doesn't
Yeah.
play the safety spot like normally people do. It's like, well, you don't understand what he's being asked to do, and he's doing it at a very high level. But I'm glad that he's getting his recognition in LA. The guy
Yeah, for
definitely
sure.
deserves it. But I
For
would
sure.
say Cam Curl, for one, without a doubt, will not put Emmanuel Forbes up there. I won't include Chase Young or Montez Sweat. I don't think that they ultimately deserve that kind of hat tip to them. You could say Deron Payne for one season where he had the double-digit sacks not too long ago. You could put it up there, but I understand your point, basically saying that defensively, Washington has really been, ever since Sean has had a hard time really gaining a defensive stand on things, and it's mainly been offensive that we've ever had any premium players, right? Like you go back to Trent, RG3, Jayden Daniels, of course, Kirk Cousins, Deshaun Jackson, Pierre Garçon. You can go down the list. And that's what literally we're in today right now because the premium players you would select it'd be Debo, it'd be Terry, it'd be Jaden, Laramie Tunsil. I think you could add Sam Cosmi into that mix, even though he's coming back from injury, slowly gaining his footing back. It just sucks to where we are at the current moment. And so leads me into this question for you, Goody. What are some things about this season that you cannot stand?
Ooh. Uh, let me really try to put something down here. Um, I can't stand now this happens in real time, week in and week out. But I can't stand the fact that we get away from the run in these matchups so early. Like it's like you come out with the script, the game plan. It's like Cliff is hearing everybody, all the headlines all week. And what does he do? He comes out and shows us something, whereas it looks like, all right, this is what we're gonna do. Heavy formations, running the ball repetitively, back to back to back, gaining yards, moving down the field quickly with the run game on the ground. Um, and then you see that fizzle out sometimes in the same quarter, sometimes in the second half, depending obviously the scores we've been playing from behind, which I understand. Um,
I was gonna make that argument for Cliff to say,
yeah,
like we do have to give him some grace. The defense has been getting ran over.
yeah, but see, that's the thing, right? And mind you, I'm just super fan, bleed burgundy and gold, but I feel like the narrative of getting behind early in a game should not handcuff your game, your balance, your run game. I feel like just because you need to catch up doesn't mean running the ball a few times, several times is gonna chew that much clock to the point where you're putting yourself in a hole where you can't even get out of. I think it's actually opposite, whereas the defense is assuming you're no longer going to run because that's the style of the NFL right now. When you get behind, you just start the gunsling. So I feel like that plays into the defense's hands even more, where they can sit back, the defense, and just sit on routes. Defensive line can get after the quarterback. And as we've seen this year, Washington has struggled with that when other teams are playing complementary football. But that's kind of a side note. I feel like we should still continue to run the ball because, again, the defense is expecting one thing, whereas you can still maneuver and get down the field and catch them off balance by sticking to the run, even in those situations. Um, but yeah, I do understand we're always playing from behind, get out of the run, get out of the rhythm. But that's something that pisses me off, I would say, this year.
Now,
Stick
look,
to the run.
it's a therapy session, man. Anybody watching, the five people that are, you can comment and whatever's pissing you off about this season. For me, ultimately, it's the lack of adjustments is what I cannot and will not stand for. Things took way too long to adjust to, because in my personal opinion, right, you have an injury depleted end group. as a defense, right? So you are getting bludgeoned again on the ground outside, and that is a legitimate concern. Highlighted from the Chargers early on, and then from so forth, right? And then obviously giving up at the big plays, and it's easier said than done. But my point being is, if you don't have those ends that you feel comfortable with that are big enough, that are uh, being able to clamp on the outside, you have a plethora of defensive tackles that you can deploy and use out there. And they do use Deron Payne and Johnny Newton on the outside. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that they don't, but it took too long. You have assets at your disposal. Use them. It's called reserves for a reason. Like right now, I am so deep into the Battle of Gettysburg. I've been doing it for 2 weeks. My wife just surprised me tonight for our anniversary gift. Our anniversary is on Monday, and she surprised me with we're going to Gettysburg in January. So I cannot wait.
Sweet.
I've been obsessing over it. But basically, you have a weak point, and you know the enemy is trying to get onto that weak point. Well, what do? You bring your reserves up and you place them there to help out your line. And that's ultimately what I cannot stand is the moving of pieces. And I understand that there's egos involved, but too many things were going on defensively. Like, for example, they're 30th in passing yards allowed. They are 29th in rushing yards allowed. And I understand it comes down to the players at your disposal. I totally get it. But you at least have to be good at one thing. Be good at one thing. Sell
Yeah.
out and just be good at that. The
Got to hang
fact that
your hat on something. Yeah.
you were getting bludgeoned in every possible way defensively. There has to be adjustments made and there has to be hard decisions made. And that's the one thing I cannot stand about this season because you have people that really make their mark by just saying things, right? And like they really not enjoy, but they really get alive during these sort of situations because this is what Washington is used to, is being in this sort of situation in early December, saying, let's start looking towards the draft, right? So like they go back, I knew this was going to happen. Everyone sucks, send everyone off. And I hate that. I hate it because we did it every single season, man. Like I want to get back to the winning. So like not making the adjustments to win is what I cannot stand. And I understand where we are right now, and there's not much you can do about it. Hindsight is 2020, of course. But we held on for things too long. And honestly, it sucks with Jayden because we know what Jayden is like when he's healthy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just not being able to have that this season at our disposal, like it's literally like dipping your toe into the water when you're getting into the pool. And that's what it's kind of been like with Jaden this season. It's like you have him, you don't. You have him, you don't. So I wish that consistency would be a legitimate thing, and maybe that'll happen next season. But I'm not one to question God's sovereignty. Obviously, everything happens for a reason. It's just as great as last season was, man. Like I said this to Tim Meek on Twitter earlier in the week, Goody, because like people were saying that some people, I don't know who, I didn't see it, but Tim Meek said this, that people were saying that they wish last year didn't happen to get our expectations so high, right? And I responded to him by the famous quote saying, it's better to have loved than to never have loved at all. And
Indeed.
like, you know what I mean? And like, I hate the breakup that we're going through right now. It sucks, but you gotta get through it, man. I
Yeah.
just wish
Yeah.
that you could do different things to stop the breakup being so bad. But
Yeah. This is one of those breakups where it's like it's happening in a private place. You think it's happening in a private, corner, but in reality, the whole school is watching it on some sort of screen.
right.
And you look over and you're like, oh man, it's just one of those seasons, man.
It's like
But
you're on
like
the
you, s-
you're on the theater stage, the curtain's closed, but then it opens right as it's being happening. You see everyone's sitting down in their seats
yeah,
watching. I'm
yeah.
like, oh,
It's one of those. Yeah, it really it's hard because, last year, me being a fan my whole life really, last year it was you could use the word magical in terms of how it felt Sunday to Sunday to Sunday. I'm from Jersey. I'm up here in Jersey. I'm actually going to the game tomorrow.
oh, I
But
was up there today.
oh sweet. So
I was up
I've
in
been dealing with
Princeton.
oh nice. That's not too far from me. I'm like an hour from there. Um but yeah, I've had people heckle me for years, Giant fans up here, Cowboy fans, Eagle fans, Washington. We were just a laughing stock, my whole fandom. So last year was really cool just to be walking around and I was humbled last year. I was just sitting there quiet and just really amazed. It was a magical season, but obviously this year was a complete opposite. So
Yeah, and that's what I kept trying to say to people last season, because they kept saying like, "Don't know, this is a playoff team with who we're beating and everything." And I was just like, "Calm down, enjoy what you have, enjoy the moment, enjoy the show. You don't know how it's gonna end, but right now it's freaking awesome. Enjoy every second of it." And I will tell you this, I enjoyed all of last season and all for what it was. Every single second of every game, that was phenomenal. I did not do that this season. I told you guys last week that during that Vikings game in the second half, I started
yeah,
vacuuming my house.
you and
Yeah,
I both,
I
which
was
is
like, dude,
crazy.
I can't. No, this is bad. Like this, I
Yeah,
because last season, one thing you could hang your hat on with this team is that they didn't give up. They fought to
Make
the end in every
to
single
the
game.
absolute end. Yeah, every
And
single game. Yeah.
this season, it seemed like multiple games where they've laid down. And as much as we want to talk about how things don't roll over into next season, I could make the argument that that game against Philadelphia, NFC Championship game, is how they started out this season and how this
Stinker.
season has gone. Do
It
you know
was a
what I mean?
stinker. Yeah, yeah.
And,
That one left a bad scent, smell, taste, and everything. It lingered into this season.
And like we can argue, people could argue, say like, well, that's just nonsensical. That doesn't correlate. But I get that. But I'm just saying that what we saw in that Philadelphia game, where our defense just got their doors blown off of us, the offense was turning over the football, and we just didn't have a chance in that football game. That's how it's felt in almost every single game this season. That we have not had a chance, and every time that we try to come back to have a chance, something happens. Something happens. The fumble against Chicago, right? Like we go down the pick last week by Jayden, and then the Mariota pick and the Mariota fumble. It's just like every single time you're trying to get back into it,
It's
something else
it's
happens.
kind of like needing maintenance done on your vehicle in multiple places. And you have the option to take it to the dealer, the certified mechanic, or you can take it to Joe Schmo over at this place on the side of the street. And you're getting these little patchwork fix ups. You're feeling good getting back on the road, and then one thing just goes wrong, the next thing goes wrong, the next thing goes wrong. That's how this season's been, man. It's been like just trying to fix something and then trying to move forward, then something else is going wrong, and we're just stagnant, standing in place, spinning in circles instead of moving forward in any direction.
Yeah, it's been a very frustrating season. I'm sure everyone else feels that way. We're not alone in that. I'm sure in the organization, they feel the same way. It's just the draft talk is a lot of fun to do to look at draft prospects, which we will get into now by a question submitted by the Colonel Goody. His question is, given Kyle's preference not to trade back for more picks, please give me a couple names of blue chip players we would be targeting. Obviously, not a quarterback.
Yeah, so I'm going to let you take this one because the draft is not my cup of tea. I'm not very savvy with the draft and the prospects and stuff. I'll be taking a little bit more of a deeper dive into it this go around, but transparently, the draft names, nothing rings a bell to me. So I'll let you take this one.
I got you. Yeah, my mindset going in, Colonel, was that someone like Arvel Reese was that kind of blue chip guy you could go in with. And not specifically just because of what he does on the field, but how he's utilized at Ohio State, where they use him at middle linebacker, but then he's also used on the edge. They even will slide him out at like an end at like a 4-5 technique right inside the tackle or a 3 technique right inside the tackle. And they'll use him a variety of ways. And if you go back to what Dan Quinn and Joe Witt were doing with Micah Parsons in Dallas, is they were using him everywhere. But the big difference is that Arvel Reese does not have the quickness, the acceleration that Micah has. That just is an absolute game wrecker. So what I was meaning by that is that Arvel Reese is that perfect kind of fit for what Washington defensively kind of needs at this moment, and being that the identity of the defense with somebody who is high caliber. Now, am I going to say that now after watching Arvel Reese a little bit, that I think that he could be that blue chip guy right away? I'm not 100% sure. He is a little bit heavy in the feet, but also if you look at somebody like Ruben Bain from Miami, very heavy footed. Now, he's like more so your prototypical kind of defensive end, big stature, very, very strong. But he's a guy who's has excellent bull rush, but like kind of that lateral quickness, he's not the type of guy that's going to run and hawk things down for you. He's more your prototypical kind of D end. And so I'm looking for that kind of like speed, right? And I know that I'm so glad that Hall isn't here for me to say this, but I think the kid Tyson from Arizona State is the guy I'm looking at to say this is a blue chip frickin' player, man.
That's the wide receiver, right?
Yeah, from Arizona State. And he has positional flexibility. He's using the slot, he's using the X and the Y. He is great at the short yardage game. His foot quickness getting off the line of scrimmage, his footwork and getting out of his breaks and being able to create separation. There's one play I uploaded on Twitter where he's in the slot and it's like it's first or second down. I think it's second and 15 or first and 15, and he does an outside, goes inside outside move on the corner at the 2 yard mark to separate a little bit more. Then he gets up to the yard marker and does another cut to the outside. And by the time he makes that cut, that corner is 3 yards away from him, and it's a pitch and catch from the quarterback to the wide receiver to him, just for him to turn around for the football for the first down. Like that sort of productivity is something that this offense honestly needs. As much as I love Terry McLaurin and what he brings to the table, obviously he brings it over the middle, a fantastic deep ball receiver. You don't really have that route running crispness that is a legitimate threat at every level of the defense. And it's not just in the short yardage game where Tyson is very, very good. This dude will attack you downfield, is very fast, and is dependable hands in catching of the football. I think he's the blue chip guy you could really target. I know others will go to Carnell Tate from Ohio State, another wide receiver. I haven't been able to watch any Ohio State offense yet. I'm hoping to be able to. Some will be uploaded here soon, and there's others that are going to be available. I haven't really started chipping out that iceberg, so to speak, of the NFL draft, but those are a couple guys that I looked at. There's a dude from Tennessee, Brazil. This dude is 6'5", 200 pounds, an absolute crazy deep threat wide receiver. I think he's phenomenal. He's not like Tyson in the sense of being that short yardage, the route crispness, the footwork and everything. He's not that type. He's more so of the Deshaun Jackson-esque, but him being 6'5" is the ultimate difference there. But
If I'm sorry, if you had a NFL comp to Tyson, who would you kind of put that up to?
well, he's 6'2", 200 pounds. He's got fantastic footwork in route running. So I would say that you could look at somebody like a Keenan Allen, so to
Okay.
speak. Devontae is another one that comes to mind. I don't know Devontae's measurables coming out or what he is at now, but he's a tall, kind of lanky dude, and that's ultimately what you'd be getting with Tyson. Brazel is much more so of not Jalen Waddle. Big, deep threat, kind of like a DK Metcalf type, but much more skinny than DK. Not as like a crazy, like robot kind
Yeah,
of guy.
not jacked up like yeah.
Right. But he's very somebody you could really stretch the field with. And that's ultimately what Washington has been missing this season. So I wouldn't poo-poo that away. But the wide receivers in this draft, I think, are going to be a premium as to what you're really getting. I think the people are going to be stretching for quarterbacks. I do think the Arvil Reese is going to be selected early, as well as he should be. He's just a phenomenal football player, does a lot of things right. It's just the intangible of the speed attribute kind of thing that makes you a little bit hesitant of it. But the football IQ, what he does, he's just a hard hat worker, is ultimately what he is. He does a lot of things right, and that's the kind of guy you can build your defense on. So if that's the pick, I'd absolutely love it. But just speaking of premium guys, I get what you're getting at, Colonel. That trading back might not be the stupidest decision. I heard Logan talk about this on the Take Command podcast with Grant, saying that, in history, the draft has proven that the teams that have the more picks have better drafts. And I get that. I totally do. But I really think that we need some premium players on this football team. It's just my personal opinion. And I know it's hard to do in the draft because we picked Chase Young at number 2 and we didn't get much productivity out of it. But I just think that if this is one of those pieces where you could solidify that defense going forward to really plant your flag, I know that we want more picks, and I'm all for it. I just don't know how much we'd be getting uh, given with this quarterback class. Because typically, if you have a really healthy quarterback class, you're able to get something.
There's more
And
traction for people to move up and give up more. Yeah.
right, exactly.
Again, this happens every year, right? At this time of year, everybody's kind of just nonchalant about prospects and drafts and needing and wanting this. When it starts to turn that corner and we're in February and it's getting into March, people start to get a little desperate. People start to get a little reckless. I'm saying organizations, GMs, and they start to do things that are unpredictable. So, we can't be too sure just yet. And especially where we are with the height of our pick, there may be some action there, but we'll see.
Yeah, and I'll tell you a little insider. A lot of what they'll do is they'll just have a new guy every week. So that way, when the draft does happen and somebody gets selected, see, this is my guy. You know what I'm saying?
Pretty
Uh,
much, pretty
that's
much.
typically what happens. Now, the next question from the Colonel, Goody. What is in store for Deron Payne? If we trade him for draft picks, we'd be lucky to get a third rounder. And Johnny Newton underwhelmed this year, so I don't consider him to be one for one replacement. What are your predictions?
Yeah, the Ron Payne train is a little. I'm a little. It kind of hits a soft spot because me personally, I want him on the team. When we saw the writing on the wall with Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne, the Alabama brothers, that partnership coming to an end last year, it all seemed like it happened so fast. I remember we drafted John Allen. I forget what year, maybe I don't know, 2019, 2018, something like that.
I think it
Um,
was 16 or 17, if I'm not
wow.
mistaken.
Okay, so that far back, but yeah, we picked up John Allen. The next year, we go and get Deron Payne. We
Because
have,
the only reason
yeah.
2019 was Dwayne Haskins and Terry.
Okay.
So I think Duran might have been 2018. I think John 2017.
The year before. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that was a time in Washington where it looked like we were doing something building wise in terms of personnel on our defense, building an identity. It looked like everything was on a path. Um, and where that talent fell through or why it didn't synchronize, because we did have some serious dogs. People talked about the first round talent on our across our defensive line, from Kerrigan to Duran to John Allen, and there's somebody else I'm forgetting, but yeah, that all seemed like it happened so fast. I felt like we had a solid defensive line for the future, and now you look at it, Jonathan Allen gets shipped out last year. Deron Payne's on another contract season, and it's just like time is flying. Father Time is undefeated. So to have that question of Deron Payne, whether he stays, whether we trade him, what are we looking at there? That's going to be a move that is going to really determine where this organization is moving forward on the defense. Obviously, we all know the defense needs the most attention right now, and for you to have a player like Deron Payne who's still performing at a high level and consider trading him for picks, I mean, are those picks going to necessarily translate into, serviceable players on your defense? So you got to kind of think about that because Deron Payne, you know what he's bringing, and he does still have potential to reach higher levels. So I don't see the value in getting picks for Deron Payne. I think you have more value with having him on your team, especially like you said with the continuity. He's well aware of what he has to do, and it's tough. For Deron Payne to walk out the door, I would feel like we're really turning over a leaf in Washington, and there's going to be a lot of growing pains to follow. So I'm more or less with keeping Deron Payne, and try to get your draft capital elsewhere, even though it's not going to be easy. But I think there's more value with Deron Payne being on that defensive line.
Yeah. And well, so I'll first say this, Colonel. Look, I understand how this season has gone. I totally get it. And I know that people are going to find things to point blame at and to find negativity towards to say, this guy isn't performing well. This guy, like, I get it. But it's a freaking collective, dude. You can't be 29th in rushing, 30th in passing, and then bring up to say, well, Johnny Newton has been underwhelming. It's been the entire unit altogether. Every single person that's strapped on a helmet on that defense has been underwhelming, to be perfectly honest. I think we all can agree with that. So with Johnny, when Johnny came out in the draft, we all knew he was undersized coming out of his injury, but his hand usage was phenomenal. You think of like the Karate Kid type stuff, John Claude Van Damme type stuff. He was phenomenal at that and being able to get after the passer. And he was quick and he had a motor to him to get sideline to sideline. He was very helpful used all over. He gets here last year, is injured, and then doesn't really play all that much. And so this year is much more so of like the learning curve for somebody like Johnny Newton, where you can't like you remember how Chase Young came into Washington saying, "I know I'm this good. This is what I'm going to do." The reason why somebody like Terry McLaurin can go under the radar at somewhere like Ohio State and then come to the pros and be a premier wide receiver is because of the work ethic, knowing having to get better on your craft every single day, finding any way to get better. And I think that's the kind of avenue that Johnny is kind of learning in right this moment. He can't just depend on his hand usage because he's going against the most strongest and most violent people on earth on the along the offensive line. I've seen people talk about. I know one guy asked me, he's like, "Do you think that I could play against?" I think it was Leno at the time. He's like, "Do you think that I could rush against Leno and I'd beat him?" I was like, "Hell no, dude. I don't think you guys really understand how
Eat them
good these.
alive. I
You have
know.
no idea how good these guys are, what they do. I know what you see on the TV is different, but I'm just saying that's why it's crazy to hear people talk on Twitter about this guy sucks. This guy, like, dude, calm down. But ultimately he's just got to find that edge a lot of it has to do with study, is finding on your opponent, is finding kind of tells that they have, where are their weaknesses, does that go towards my strength, can I be able to do this on this play to be able to access that, and ultimately then that has a second layer to it because that where you're trying to attack their weakness could be to their strength on that play because it's an outside run and you're going inside, right? You're going out of position. But it's ultimately finding the right place to be able to implement it and do it well and to use it. And I think Johnny is learning that curve, and he has the right coaching staff to help him in Ryan Kerrigan and Daryl Tapp and company to kind of walk him through this sort of scenario. Now, that being said, with Deron Payne, it's hard to argue that he'll be on the team next season. Like I said, we're 30th in rushing yards, 29th in passing yards, or in 29th in rushing, 30th in passing. And at some point, you got to say the ship has set sail, right? Like ultimately, I want Duran to be happy to have a good professional career. And just like with Cam Curl, Manuel Forbes, and others, maybe it's at a different destination. I've talked to this with Logan before, and Logan said sometimes a different scenery is good for guys, coaches and players alike. And maybe that's what Duran kind of needs for everyone to kind of see what he brings to the table. I would ultimately love for him to do that here. But it,
I feel like we've seen him show,
yeah,
who he is and his level of, talent. I feel like we've seen flashes, more than flashes, I'll say, where he can actually take over at times.
I'll
Um,
say this
yeah.
to your point. Washington typically has better results from a lack of expectations. So when we used to look at Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne, we're like two first rounders, and we had a set of expectations of what that ultimately means. That we're going to have a stout defense up front. They're going to get after the passer. They're going to be just wreaking havoc. And like that wasn't what we got, right? We got much more of even keel type stuff. And that's not what we were really looking for. I would make the argument, Goody, that at this point in time, it'd probably just be better to go with the low expectation because like everyone coming in, everyone what was said about Javon Kinlaw before the season that he was an overpay, that he was a shell of himself, he didn't do well in the Jets. He comes in here and he was like honestly the one guy you could say that stood out that was like, whoa, he's like
Yeah.
destroying people out there.
Yeah.
And
Lawrence
so
Armstrong too, with the low
exactly.
expectations.
And so
Yeah.
let's keep those low expectations kind of thing. Like ultimately it's not helping us to have these kind of high expectations for these kind of players. Let's reset the board. And I think when you're I don't know what job you're in, but if you have this kind of discrepancy where it's just absolutely riddled. Like I'll go back to this story I heard about what's the dumpster, the recycling company. They come and pick up I junk whatever company. He his workforce wasn't doing all that well. He fired literally everybody, all of them, and then rehired, and then all of a sudden they ballooned. And I think ultimately, when you look at something like this, you have to be thinking about that in that way. And do I think that Deron will get us something in return? Absolutely. Deron Payne is somewhat young. He is productive. He's very reliable in the sense that he plays a lot. And so, yeah, somebody would be willing to go up and get him. And I think that somebody would. Is that the best case scenario going forward? I'm not sure because Javon Kinlaw is getting up there in age. Johnny Newton, like you said, hasn't really showcased himself to show that he is a starter, of course. But let's give him that opportunity. And we can't discount that with Johnny Newton this year. With having Deron Payne and Javon Kinlaw in front of him, he hasn't had the crazy amount of reps that they've had. So let's give him the benefit of the doubt in that sort of regard. So, in regards
Yeah.
to Deron, what is my prediction? My prediction is that something is going to happen and he's not going to be on here next year because they have to make changes.
Yeah,
It's
fair enough. Fair
they
enough.
have to. Last question from the Colonel. Speaking of blue chip players, what about a blue chip defensive coordinator? Clearly, defense was our biggest weakness this year. Is there a DC prospect out there who could come in and just kill it for us? I'm not impressed with DQ calling our defense, especially after the 31-0 drubbing we took last week.
In terms of prospects, I'm not really aware of who's available um in terms of defensive minds. I do know that you may not have somebody that's necessarily available, but you could always kind of go out and pick your guy off of somebody else's team. If you're elevating them into the D coordinator position, obviously they're going to take that job, maybe. Um, but yeah, you this is something that we kind of discussed a few episodes back, whereas how does this affect DQ's pride in terms of, is he able to, which we've seen, is he able to kind of swallow his pride and say, like, I need help? Like, who can help me here? Whereas this is basically his motif, his background, his defense. Is he able to go out and reach out to somebody that's going to come in here and shake things up? They're going to have a tall task, and anybody that's interviewing for that job, if it becomes available, is going to know, like, the pressure's on just from the interview because the defense, like you said, 29th in rushing, 30th in pass. They got their hands full with it. But
Yeah.
if DQ is able to kind of, which I don't think he's that type of person, but again, we don't know this. These are all grown men, football players. They do have pride. Some may not. But if he's the DQ that I remember when we hired, I don't see him having a problem with trying to be better and go and get something better to get it done. That question mark, I mean, amongst all of the things that we have to address this offseason, that's one that's like I kind of wish wasn't on the list per se, just because it's just more mess in terms of trying to figure it out. And whenever you do make that decision, is it the right decision? And then you're basically just sitting and waiting for something to go wrong to say that I told you that wasn't the right idea, kind of thing. So I wish this one wasn't like floating around the idea of the next season's defensive coordinator, but I trust Dan Quinn that he's going to be able to identify somebody that's going to come in and get this done.
Yeah, the easy go-to Colonel is Al Harris from Chicago. That's what everyone's going to point to, the relationship with DQ in the past. I think Gannon from Arizona, the head coach there, who was the Philadelphia defensive coordinator when they won the Super Bowl with Hurts and others. No, but did they lose that one? But like those are some names you could really look at. But like ultimately, what I'm looking for is the attacking. This is what I was talking about earlier. The things I can't stand. Talking about the attacking style of a defense, right? A lot of this season, I look, I love the cover three. I love cover four. I'm all about it. I get it. You want to be able to suffocate an offense, but that's not what was happening defensively for us this season. It didn't matter what we were in. They knew what we were in. They knew where to go to with the football, and they were ripping off huge chunks of yardage that were destroying this defense. So you have to make an adjustment. If you sit back, you get destroyed. So what do you do? Well, you adjust. You attack all the time because that's the only thing you could possibly do. You can't rely on your front four to get after the passer all the time. You can't rely on your defenders to make tackles in the open field to stop runs. Attack. Get in the backfield. Make it difficult to run. Make it difficult to at least somewhat pass the football. And if you're sending them into max protection, great. We have less people to cover. That's even better for us at this point. So, like, the lack of adjustment is what's killing me. So, if I'm looking for anything at defensive coordinator, I need an attacking style guy. I need someone who can convey that message, be consistent in deploying that message, and making sure that's what we are getting. Because at this point, the sitting back, the cover three, you have to adjust. We're getting destroyed.
How often do you hear people complain about having a defense that's too aggressive, that blitzes too much? You know, so I feel like that's something that you got to be able to entertain the idea of adopting because if you're like I would be way more okay with living and dying by the aggressive blitzing disruption, win or lose. If you're playing that way, if you're bringing that noise, I can live and die by that. If you're just sitting back and getting gashed and gapped and out of position and just getting dinked and dunked, Swiss cheese, that's hard. You know, that's hard because it looks like the eye test, the defense just looks pitiful, whereas if they were attacking and at least you saw some sort of, you know, pressure, you can live with that, whether you get beat on that or not. But instead of sitting back and thinking that you have it figured out and just getting gashed and gashed, it's embarrassing.
Yeah, I would go and recommend anybody to go to Deuce's Red Zone in the Lab on Twitter and go to the video he uploaded of what our offensive line was going through against the Vikings, where the Vikings were standing up multiple people.
Hmm.
And there was everybody on the line of scrimmage. And honestly, on every snap, it wasn't like they were rushing all of them. They
Yep.
were dropping guys out, but it makes you confused. And this is something I've been preaching about this entire season. Do that. You don't have to blitz on every play, if you don't, but at least confuse them because the first touchdown to Oliver, the tight end, I think it was Oliver, but it was the seam route to the end zone where Mikey came over and barely missed the ball, right? And everyone's clowning on Mikey. They're going, Mikey Sanderson sucks. That's his fault. That's a cover three seam, right? Mikey is responsible for the sideline all the way to the back pylon, right? That ball is in between him and Quan. I think it was Quan in free safety. It might have been Harris, but that ball is coming in between both of them. Somebody has to converge on it, and that's a hard thing to do for both of these guys to converge in that middle with a fastball going downfield. Very difficult to do. My point being is I love zone coverage in the red zone because the yards are shorter, it's more congested, and it makes things more difficult for an offense. But ultimately, my issue is they know exactly what you're in. They know exactly what you're running. They know exactly where to hit you. That's the issue. You have to be more unique. If you're able to attack more, you make people think more. If they think that you might be attacking here, they might not be able to go to that play to say they are in cover three because I don't know who they're sending in my face. And so that's what I need out of a defensive coordinator. Someone who's willing to cause confusion and actually inflict their will. I'm getting on a tangent here with this. But I look, I love football. I'm a defensive minded person, ultimately, altogether. And I can't stand what I witnessed this season defensively, man. It breaks my heart. This next question from Deluxe. Besides development or additional snaps for young players, the easy answer, what are you looking for from the team this week?
Besides, what were the two?
Besides development or additional snaps for young players, the easy answer, what are you looking for from the team?
Okay, I think I'm gonna go with the same answer that I kind of gave on um a few episodes back, but for me, I feel like one of the most important things here um is the team losing its brotherhood, its standard. Um I don't want to see a locker room divided. Now, if it's being divided or kind of if it's being shaken up in a sense where that's just people, players holding each other accountable, I'm okay with that. But the one thing I don't want to see is for this culture to start to diminish based off of obviously losing so many games, having not the season that we anticipated, and just being the laughing stock almost, of the NFL currently. The one thing that I want to see over these last, 4 games is that this team is still a team at the end of the year because I feel like that's way more important than the record, way more important than injuries, the most important thing for this regime is that whatever that they built initially stays afloat. Because if that starts to take some hits, then you got way bigger problems on your hand than the product that's on the field. So
All
for
right.
me, I would just say I want this team, the locker room, everybody to be in sync going into next season, finish out this season strong with that brotherhood and just fighting for each other instead of fighting each other.
I do have to apologize for the rant I'm about to go on,
Here we
but
go.
I'm fired up now. I'm fired up. Um, what do I want to see in this game? Branching off of what I just discussed, I want to see them attack and not just defensively. I want to see it offensively. You cannot go through this season and end this season on your back. At some point, you got to fight. You got to show me something. And especially with this season, ultimately, what DQ preaches, what Joe Witt was preaching. I understand Cliff is not really of that mindset. He much more is calm, cool, collected Cliff, as we all love and know him for. But especially offensively, the Giants coming into this game, they're 31st in the league in rushing yards allowed, 154 yards on average per game they give up. Run it down their damn throat. Do not let up on it. Allow the play action to work off of that. I understand that we like the wide receiver screens. We like the end arounds. I totally get it. The wide receiver screen is a branch off of running the football. Defenses know we're doing that, and they're able to stop it pretty well. There are times it works out in our favor against the blitzes. Continue doing that, but run it down their damn throat, dude. This you can't end this season on your freaking back. At some point, you got to get up and punch somebody in their face, and hopefully, this is what this team is able to achieve this Sunday. That's what I am looking for, just to be able to inflict your will. Stop being the punching bag. And so I know the camaraderie in the locker room is fantastic. That's great. Then band together and beat somebody up, please. And I don't care if you lose. I don't care if you lose. At least show some life. Because this season has been just a gigantic letdown. The fact that we're just a walking doormat. I'm tired of it. I want to see something different. And like I get it, we all don't like losing. I hate losing more than I love winning. And I've gone through it my entire life. I don't want to see it more. But at least fight. I cannot. I could give you credence like the Chicago game. I could give you respect for the fact that that was a football game. You worked your ass off, just unlucky at the end. One fatal mistake, and that's the difference in football games is one fatal mistake. I can live with that. I cannot live with 31-0. I cannot live with seeing JJ McCarthy laughing his ass off on the field in between plays at you because they know exactly what's about to happen. They know what they're doing. I don't like seeing Dan Campbell being able to call out, this is a touchdown right here. Punch somebody in the face, please. Like, my goodness, what has happened to this football team? So, if anything this weekend, be physical, be violent, attack, and punch somebody in the frickin' mouth, dude. At some point, you got to do it. At some point.
Preach.
My
Preach.
goodness. Now, the next question from Deluxe. Who has more impact in the game this week, Sinnott or Yankov?
So me, I'm more of a underdog kind of guy, so I would typically say Yankoff just because we've seen little sprinkles of him over the past few games. But I'm actually gonna go with Sinnott. I think he's gonna be, I don't want to say featured, but I think he's gonna get a tall glass of work to go out with. And I think he's gonna make some plays. Now, like I said, I would say Yankov just because I saw them sprinkling him in over the past few games, whereas it looked like they were drawing that stuff up for him. It wasn't just like, oh, this is my fourth read, let me get it out to him. I was actually surprised when I saw him, getting some burn out there. But I think this week Sinnett's gonna have some featured, he's gonna be featured in his offense. Now, mind you, Zach Ertz is not playing. So Yankoff is going to be that, backup, kind of receiving tight end, whereas John Bates is going to still do his role. So
Yeah.
there are going to be situations where Yankoff is, like I said, that third or fourth read, and he's open, and he may get some good gains out there. But I do think they may feature Sinnott out here this week.
Yeah, like credit to Deluxe for wording this the way that he did, in impact and not just in productivity, right? They've been using Yankoff a lot as like the kind of fullback type. It wouldn't surprise me if they use John Bates more in that fullback type way instead of Yankoff, and then using Yankoff and Sinnott off of each other, either comboed one side, strong side, or using it in a balanced kind of set. So it wouldn't surprise me if they went down that route. Obviously, we know about the Giants defensively, what they have on the defensive line, and what kind of havoc they can bring. And so extra blockers are probably going to be a thing in this game. Would love to see. Bates as the fullback because he's a natural lineman altogether, and he's somebody that could create huge holes for you in the run game. And if you're talking about that aggressive style of running, adding John Bates as a fullback as your lead blocker is as violent and aggressive as you could possibly get. That's what I want to see. Now, who's going to have the more impact? I do think it's going to be Sinnott, and I think Sinnott's going to be showcased just a little bit more in terms of the passing game because of impact, you're talking like what you're being able to view, whereas Yankoff, where his impact could be on like much more of a football level, that's not the hard hat worker type of mentality of just doing things to help everyone else benefit. Whereas I do think Sinnott would benefit from a touchdown or multiple first downs where it would have more impact amongst the fan base and viewers, if
Yeah,
that makes sense. If that
yeah.
makes sense.
And
But
this works into his favor as well because if this were to be the situation at certain times throughout the season where our offense wasn't at full health, no Terry, no Debo, no Noah, and all the defense had to do was worry about the potential of this backup tight end,
right.
he may be a blip, on the map. But with our offense being at kind of full strength, quote unquote, Ben Sinnott may have even more chance of being featured just off the strength of that.
Yeah, let's see him use that seam route like we got beat with last week. I certainly, and which is crazy because you and I and Hall, I think it was last week, talked about Sinnott and him not really showcasing. And I said like he hasn't had that many chances to really showcase what he could do in him and Yankoff, right? Because I think what it was is Hall said that the tight end room was shaky. And I said, well,
Hmm.
wait a minute. Like we haven't been able to really see it because Ertz is there commanding so many snaps.
Yeah.
So it's just crazy. A week later, now we're in this position where we're going to see what they have with a couple games left. And going into the offseason, we're going to see if it's shaky or not. Maybe we'll have something to hang our hat on in that tight end room going forward. Because I'm tired of that argument with Hall
I
about
think
the
we
tight end
will.
room.
I was listening to a podcast. John Keim did a short interview with Ben Sinnott. It was kind of the first time you got to hear him. But he spoke about him and Zach and how they differ. And he kind of, obviously Zach, Hall of Fame tight end, been in the league forever, called him more of a, refined route runner, precise route runner. He can cut you up. And he said, Sinnott said himself, he can win against man, obviously, but his role is more of a run after catch. He said, get the ball in his hands and kind of let him move and tumble down the field. So for him to openly say that about him, it kind of shows an identity that we kind of wonder about. So just to hear it from the mouth from his mouth himself, and kind of open my eyes for this game next week, this tomorrow to see what it looks like on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. Mr. JK. Now, the next question from Deluxe Goody. Would you trade Tunsil and roll with Coleman and Connerly? Trades to acquire draft capital normally happen at deep positions. Could use some of money saved on Tunsil towards Paul. Tunsil money could probably retain Paul as a starter and other depth players on the line. What picks could they get for him?
I'm gonna say no. I'm keeping LT. Um, Need my left tackle. We got our franchise quarterback. Laramie Tunsil came in here and he had himself a season, even though we didn't have ourselves a season. In terms of getting picks back for him and running with Coleman and the other guys on the roster, why not just run with the depth that we have, right? We see what happens in other positions where our premier guys go down and we're kind of struggling to stay above water. So why not let that be a value to you? Why would you put yourself in a position where there's potential where you'd have to suffer from something like that? I'd much rather have LT stay here for the foreseeable future, and have that installation on your offensive line where you have these guys that are A, experienced, B, ready to go, and C, talented as well, still growing. So you get to have your premier left tackle. You still got to have your depth on your offensive line, and that depth continues to grow and develop. The offensive line is a very important position in the NFL. We all know. So for me, I'm keeping LT. You guys can have your picks. That's my take.
Yeah, credit for Deluxe for thinking out of the box in terms of questions because it's hard to come up with questions for every episode, but Deluxe
No, it's
continues to
fine.
do so.
It's a good question.
It
Some
is.
people, some anything can happen.
Exactly. I reward him for coming up with this,
Look, and
but
we finesse. We weren't even supposed to have Laramie Tunsil, right? Like that was something
right.
that just kind of poofed into reality. So
in my I understand where he's coming from because that's probably the one position that could garner us some picks that would make us at least feel good about that trade, right? Like the Duran and others really can't get much that to write home about.
Yeah.
But the political standpoint and viewpoint of this would be catastrophic. Jayden having injury concerns this season, last season, sure the ribs were a thing, but is it really that smart to trade away Laramie Tunsil coming off of the injury plagued season that he did have? And that's where I kind of rest with. Do they want to deal with that headache? And do I really believe in Coleman at left tackle for the future? I do not. I think that that's somebody you can really love to have as a swing backup tackle if in case of need be. And I think that's where you would go with. And so no, I wouldn't. I understand the question because you want more draft picks and I get it. I'm just not willing to mortgage the future of Jayden Daniels' health because I said this last season. I want Jayden finishing breaking Brett Favre's starting record, which obviously is shot at this point. But that's what I want for Jayden to stay healthy, to be able to play every game, to really showcase what he can do and to actually get better. If anyone is going to tell me that he could get better, just sit on the sidelines, I call bullcrap because what has happened this season? It's not like the games that he has come in and played that he's blown the doors off everybody. There is a process to this of getting back into the rhythm of things, and you have to be on the field to do that. So, in my personal opinion, it's retaining Laramie Tunsil. This last question that we have is from Tim Towner. Football is a game of weak links, where the offense attacks the defense's weaknesses. Which players are our biggest weak links? Would you consider not bringing them back?
On defense,
Yeah,
our weakest links on defense. I know what everybody wants to hear. Um, weakest links on defense, would I bring them back? I mean, wow, where do you start? Because you feel like you have so much like talent in each position, right? That's how you feel. At least I feel we have talent in each of those positions on defense, defensive line, linebacker, corner, safety. But the results are not showing that. So the weakest link, I mean, I, I guess you could say linebacker. I mean, it's tough. It's tough. We're getting beat on the run. We're getting beat in the pass, and those units aren't individual people. So it's hard to say who's the weakest link. Um, if I were to go, say, for example, defensive line, I think the weakest link this season on defensive line would probably be Newton. Just haven't seen enough. But who knows? He can be making those plays or doing his job the way he's supposed to be.
fair.
The linebackers are, Bobby's weakness is obviously in the passing game, which everybody knows that, so it's not even like it's a weakness. It's just not what he does. Like, I mean, it's hard to say, but he's killing it in the run game and tackling, getting those stops in the middle. And then you have the secondary, outside cornerbacks. The weakness was Marshawn Lattimore. He was getting attacked, getting picked on. But you have Quan, you have Jeremy Reeves, Will Harris got hurt early. So it's just I got to give it to the group, man. That's hard to say who's the weakest link and who would you move away from. But if it saves you any money, I wouldn't mind moving off of Marshawn Lattimore personally.
I would agree with you. I did think that moving Marshawn to safety was the best bet for him and the defense going forward, with Will Harris being out for an extended period of time. Obviously, they wanted to see what he could do at outside corner. There's other stats that they could point to say that Marshawn was actually pretty good, and I get it. But basically, it was a domino effect. Marshawn being there, Trey Amos being on the outside, forced Mikey inside, which made Mikey a weak link. Because Mikey, as much as everyone likes to tell me he played slot corner in college, he played 1 year at corner. 1 year at corner. Every other year he was a wide receiver. Played 1 year at corner, and then all of a sudden that's his homestead on defense. He That's not where he was supposed to be. So Marshawn getting picked on, Mikey getting picked on, Bobby getting picked on in the middle of the field, Frankie Louvu getting picked on in the middle of the field. I'm Look, they are weak links, but they're weak links based on their usage. Frankie, as an edge rusher, as a blitzer, is not a weak link. That's a fantastic, highly productive football player. Bobby Wagner in the running game is a highly productive football player. Mikey on the outside is a highly productive football player. So I'm not going to say that they're weak links, but I will say how they were utilized made them weak links. And unfortunately for Bobby, I think Bobby has to make that decision, and we're going to let him make that decision on his own. But in the passing game in particular, you cannot have that weak link is going to get exposed. They are going to attack it. And especially in the middle of the field, if there is something there, everyone else looks bad. Everyone else looks bad. You have to call a different defense. You can't be doing zone so much because they're going to be attacking that area of the field. And that's something that we saw a lot of this season. So it is Bobby, unfortunately. And it's not like it's only because like that he's an overall weak link. It's that one scenario which happens to be vitally important in football in the passing of the football. And I think it was a domino effect. It was a snowball rolling downhill. It turned into an avalanche defensively, where everyone was just in their wrong position, not being utilized correctly. And we got the 29th in rushing yards and 30th in passing yards, unfortunately. And there was avenues to be able to fix it, and we just didn't make that happen for God knows what. I hope the Lord forgives me for my rant, but and for saying this, but I love Bobby. I think Bobby's a fantastic human being, and he has more talent in his toenail than I do. But just saying that overall, that is something that I just really hope that Bobby would be willing to come back and coach because that's where he would have a massive, massive impact on this football team overall, in my personal opinion. All right, everybody. That's going to wrap us up for this episode. I hope you all enjoy the game tomorrow. Thank you, Kim. I'm going to upload this to YouTube after. I still have not figured this technology thing out yet to be able to stream the multiple platforms from this source. So I'm trying to figure that out. And when I try to record with this to upload to YouTube later, it won't allow me anymore. And so I have to record the actual Zoom conversation. So you don't get the background, you don't get the transition, you don't get the intro, and I had to figure this thing out. I just haven't really had time to. So I apologize to all of you. Thank you to everyone who contributed to this episode. Thank you to the Colonel. Thank you to Arch. Thank you to Tim. Thank you to Kim, for all of you guys for just chiming in. Anybody that's watching, you're a freaking champion. If you've made it this far, my apologies for the rant. I'm Kyle,
Goody.
and we'll see you guys on Monday for actually, I'm not sure, but yeah, maybe Monday. My anniversary is on Monday. I'll see if I can swing it. All right, everybody. We'll see you then. Enjoy the game tomorrow.
Yeah,
Hopefully they're not on their backs.
I'll be there. I'll be there. I'm bringing the good luck. We're gonna get that W tomorrow.
Please do, Goody. Please do. And wear that Redskins gear. It's not like Philly.
You know it. You know it.
All right, man. Washington football. Woo!